if I need a list to make sure that I'm on top of my work every day, if I need a list to do grocery shopping every week, if I need a list to stay on track in Target, why shouldn't I have a list for what I'm doing with my money, my income on a monthly basis? Hey, loves, and welcome back to the Peace and Power podcast. This is the second episode in our series on divorce recovery. We're talking about how to rebuild your finances after a divorce. And so, what we talked about in last week's episode was prioritizing our healing and focusing only on those basic needs from a financial standpoint. If you have not watched that episode yet, I encourage you to go back and watch that before this one, because it's going to explain kind of why we're starting where we are with our budget today, and also just give you some encouragement and some basic information about the healing process after a divorce. But I want to go ahead and jump right into today's topic, because I think it's going to be very helpful for you guys, especially because we're really diving into the how-to of building your budget on today. And so we're going to talk about two things. First of all, the budget creation process. And then we're also going to be talking about how to assess your financial situation, how to assess specifically your spending, and making sure that we're assessing and analyzing those things properly so that we can make informed decisions about how to move forward with our finances. So first, I want to go to the word, because I think there are some key scriptures that are also going to help. And so I'm going to read from Luke 14:28. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it? And Habakkuk 2:2 says, Then the Lord answered me and said, Write the vision and make it plain on tablets, that he may run who reads it. So clearly, the Bible is very straightforward in saying you need to write out your plan, right? And not only that, you need to count the cost. You need to be aware of how much something is going to cost you before you set out to do that thing. And so that is exactly what having a budget is about. A budget is nothing more than a to-do list for your money. I think that we get all riled up about a budget. Oh, it has a negative connotation for various reasons, but at its very base, it is you telling your money what to do, versus when you don't have a budget, you wake up at the end of the month and wonder where all your money went, right? And so I don't know about y'all, but for me, I can't go to Target without a budget or without a to-do list, right? I can't go to Kroger or to whatever grocery store without a to-do list. Even in my daily tasks, I write down everything. Sometimes if I don't write it down, it won't get done. And so if I need a list to make sure that I'm on top of my work every day, if I need a list to do grocery shopping every week, if I need a list to stay on track in Target, why shouldn't I have a list for what I'm doing with my money, my income on a monthly basis? So it makes sense for us to have a budget. It is the responsible thing to do. And I'm going to show you today how to create a very simple, basic budget. This is for us who are just getting started on our own. We're not trying to overwhelm ourselves by doing the most, right? There are some very extensive budgets that you can do. This is going to be a very simple form of a budget. We're going to focus on those categories that I mentioned in episode 1. And we're going to expound on that a little bit by adding in a few other elements. But when you're building your basic budget, the number one thing you need to have at the very top of your list is your income, right? And so you want to make sure that you're including any income that you are expecting to get. This includes your 9-to-5, a side hustle. That could include a part-time job. That could include money from child support or alimony, if you can count on those things. And so whatever those numbers are, You need to add them up, get the total amount of money that you're expecting for the month, and put that number at the very top of your budget. Now, if you haven't gotten a piece of paper and a pencil yet, go run and get your paper and your pencil and come back so you can actually write these things down and go along with me as I'm instructing you. Now, the second thing to include in your budget, and we did not talk about this in the last episode, but it's extremely important, especially for us Christians, is your tithe. Our tithe is 10% given to our local church. For believers, tithe is something that is essential. And I know that can be a sticking point, especially when you feel like you don't have a lot of money, especially when you feel like you're already strapped for cash. How can I give another 10% to the church? I'm telling you, and I encourage you, especially if you are a Christian, to do some studying and do some praying about the tithe, because the tithe is the one area in the Bible where God gives us permission to test him. In fact, he encourages us to test him in that area. So look up this scripture, read through that. I don't have the time to do that in this particular video, although I may do a series on tithing at some point, or a video on that, because I think it's so important. But anyway, let's get into what's next. So you've got your income, you've got your 10% going towards your tithe. And for those who are not believers, sorry, I got to swing back out real quick. For those who are not believers who are watching this, that is okay. You don't have to have a line item for tithing. I do still encourage you to look into tithing and even just biblical principles for personal finance, because I do think it's very insightful whether you are a believer or you're not. So you got your income, you got your tithe. Now we're moving into those categories that are the things that on a daily basis you absolutely need in order to live, right? And so we're going to start with housing costs. And so our housing costs are money that is associated, any expenses that are associated with what it takes to run your household. And your housing costs includes your rent or mortgage. It includes any homeowners or renters insurance that you have. It's going to include your utilities, which I also consider your cell phone a utility. At this point in 2024, we don't have a lot of landline phones anymore. And so it's nearly impossible to live without a cell phone in today's society. So I do think that is included as a necessity in your housing costs. Next up, food. Food is obviously an important one. We want to make sure that we are eating, because if we do not eat, we do not live. Right? And it's not funny, but we have to say that. Sometimes we can get so bogged down in what's going on in our lives, we don't eat, but you have to eat. So you want to make sure that you're budgeting adequately for your groceries every month. I will say again, limit those outings to restaurants, but make sure that you have a budget that includes enough for you to be able to purchase food for your household, right? Okay, moving on to our next category. Category is going to be clothing. You got to have clothes on your back, right? And so clothing is one that you may not purchase every month, but you do want to make sure that you're allocating money towards it every month, even if you're not actually shopping for clothes every month. If you're like me and you don't go shopping every month, what you'll do is just put that money into a separate account, or if you do cash, you can put it in an envelope marked for clothing. And then when it's time for you to actually go shopping, you've got that reserve ready specifically for that purpose. So you don't have to dip into your monthly income to do a clothing order. Okay. Up next, transportation. Right? We're living in a society where you got to be able to get around. We're not walking 30 miles hither and yon. You either have a car, you're using Uber, you're using public transportation, something. This is the time in the budget where you're going to assign costs for the various expenses related to your vehicle. And that could be car note. If you have a car note, it's your car insurance. It also includes your any sort of fees that you're expecting. Here in Georgia, we have registration fees every month, or I'm sorry, not every month, every year in your birthday month that you have to pay. And so you want to make sure you're considering any sort of expenses related to your vehicle, including including, of course, gas, but also maintenance and repairs, because cars don't last forever. Okay, they depreciate every single time you get in them. So you want to make sure you're setting some money aside to be able to make sure you're getting your basic maintenance, but also for when the inevitable occurs, you'll be able to take care of repairs for your vehicle. Um, and then we want to talk about making sure that we have insurance covered. Now, this I'm speaking specifically about your health insurance and your life insurance. Health insurance may be something that's covered by your employer, but if it is not, you want to make sure that you have health insurance. And then life insurance, even if it is covered by your employer, you're going to want to have a policy of your own as well. And term life insurance is a great way to get something inexpensively. And so look into those options in your area as well. Now, this is where we can get a little bit uneasy, because we're going to talk a little bit about our debts. The debts category can be a little daunting for many of us, right? But for now, at this stage of your healing, I want you to focus only on the minimum. We want to make sure that we are current on our debts. We want to make sure that we're current on our debts. And at this stage in coming out of a divorce, we're not necessarily talking about paying off all of your debt immediately. We're not necessarily talking about starting your debt snowball and doing all that. Right now, we're just talking about being current, paying that minimum, making sure that everything is up to speed, everything is up to date. You don't have creditors calling you and harassing you for their money. You want to make sure that you are current on your debts. From there, anything you have that's extra needs to go into savings. Your savings is really going to be the meat of your financial freedom, because it's what's going to hold you when and if something happens, an emergency happens, right? And so if you have debt that needs to be paid off, you want to start with just $1,000 in the starter emergency fund. And these little arrows here are just showing that relationship between your debts and your savings. You want to make sure you have $1,000 in a starter emergency fund. Once you have $1,000 in this savings account, then you can go back to your debts, and now you can increase your payments on your debts from just the minimum to actually working towards paying those debts off. So this is how you build a basic budget. Obviously, you're going to do this on a sheet of paper, but if you like the index cards, you can do this as well. You can write this out on an index card, and on the other side, you can put the amounts. There's lots of ways to be able to do this. But this is just a visual example. So now you've got all of your categories listed out. You've got all of the dollar amounts that you need to spend in each category, or that you're projecting to spend in each category. What you're going to do is add up all of the expense categories and get your total. Then you're going to take your total income and subtract your total expenses. In a perfect world, you would get 0, which is a balanced budget. If you have money left over, again, that's money you can put into your savings. If you're upside down, okay, if you have more going out than you have coming in, then that's when it's time to make some adjustments to some of your spending categories. You're going to have to think seriously about either bringing your income up or decreasing your expenses. But again, the purpose of this exercise is not to overwhelm you. It is to give you a clear picture on where you stand financially so that you can make some adjustments and move forward. Now, when we talk about the second part of this video, it is analyzing your spending. Analyzing your spending. That is major, okay? Because we have to understand who we are, how we spend money, why we spend money the way that we do. We have to understand those things about ourselves in order to make effective change and move forward. So I'm going to walk you through how to do that as well. And for this, I want to read a couple Bible verses. 2 Corinthians 13:5a reads, "Examine yourself as to whether you are in the faith. Test yourselves." And Galatians 6:4, "But let each one examine his own work, and then he will have rejoicing in himself alone and not in another." So again, it's very clear that the Bible gives us instruction to examine ourselves, to look at ourselves closely so that we can really know, am I doing what I think I'm doing, or are there some spots in there where I need to tighten things up a bit? And the only way from a financial standpoint that you're going to have a clear picture is by actually tracking your spending habits. And so what that looks like is, again, very basic, on a piece of paper, writing down your expenses. And I suggest you do this for a month. Write down everything. If you spend cash, keep those receipts. Take time at the end of the week to write out what you have done, what you have spent your money on, right? Another option is to utilize the banking software, right? You can get a statement, or you can go into your online banking account and actually pull up the expenses that you've used your card for. And for most of us, it may be a combination of the two. But the important thing is that for one full month, you have a clear picture of where you have spent your money. And so what you're going to do in that instance is write down or print off every expense that you've made, and then assign that expense to a category. Okay. And then you're going to add up everything for each category so that you see where your money is going. Is there one category that's outweighing the others in a way that doesn't seem healthy? Are you eating out a lot more than you had planned to? What is going on within that month that is causing you to overspend? Or are you doing great and you're not spending as much money? And you're kind of on track with what you want to be doing financially. Either way, it's good to have that picture to be able to see exactly what you're doing. Don't do this alone. Do not do this alone. Get a friend, a family member, your counselor or therapist, someone who you can trust, who you can talk to, who you can let in. And it doesn't have to be a whole village of people. This could just be one or two people who you really trust, who you know have the same mindset as you when it comes to biblical principles and things like that. Someone who you don't mind speaking into your life in a way that's going to help you. Ask them to come along for the journey. Girl, I need you to help me sort through these receipts today. Or I just don't have the energy to really look at this budget, or the budget is not balancing. Can you please take a look at it for me and see if there's areas where I can tighten up? Okay. Don't do this by yourself. Even if you don't want the hands-on help of another person, having someone else aware of what you're doing, at least so they can pray with you, so they can encourage you, all those things, they're very important because you're not in this alone. And the more you welcome those around you who do love you and who do care about you, you can continue to get encouragement and support from them. And lastly, I want to leave you with another Bible verse because I just love the word and the way it speaks to every area of our life. And so I'm going to read to you now Psalm 139, 23 through 24. "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxieties, and see if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." This Bible verse is actually a prayer, right? It is reaching out to God and asking Him, inviting Him into the process so that He can show you the areas that you need to work on, the things that need to be tightened up. And so, in addition to inviting accountability or inviting encouragement through your friends or counselors or whoever that third party is, invite God into your situation. Ask Him for guidance. Ask Him because He knows the things inside of us that we are afraid to look at. He knows the places in us that we don't want to really uncover. He knows the things that are going on inside of us that do cause us to overspend, the things that do cause us to feel like we need to fill a void, right? And so in all that you're doing right now in your life and all that you're doing from a financial standpoint, make sure that you include God in the process. That's all I have for you guys today. I can't wait to see you again for episode number 3. We're going to be continuing to have a great conversation about divorce recovery and dig even deeper into some hands-on things that we can do to rebuild our finances after divorce. Thanks so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, all the things. And I look forward to seeing you next time.